Hi everyone, welcome to the third and final video for week 9. In this video we're going to introduce you, we're just going to draw your attention to reporting verbs and the related adverbs, because both of these can help you express your opinion about the ideas of others. Okay, so what are reporting verbs? Reporting verbs are words that introduce an author's ideas, arguments, actions, findings, or beliefs into your writing. And because in academic writing usually draws on the research of others and when discussing other people's works, it's important to appropriately introduce evidence. Reporting verbs can be very, very useful for students. So reporting verbs can be positive, negative, or neutral. So that is that they can indicate the attitude of an author to their ideas under consideration, and that attitude, whether that attitude is positive, neutral, or negative. But it can also indicate that an author performed a particular action, or that your attitude to the ideas. So if your attitude as a student writing about this is that, is it positive, neutral, or negative? So it can also do this. And in doing all of this, it can also help differentiate between your voice and the voice of others in your writing. Okay, so now I'm just going to go over some examples of where the author is expressing their neutral attitude towards the information that they're conveying. And I might ask you also to pause the video at after this next point and see if you can come up with some yourself. So I'm going to ask you which reporting verbs might indicate that the author has a neutral attitude to the information. So I would pause the video at this point and see how many you can jot down that you think, so this is reflecting a neutral attitude to the information. And I'll bring some up in a second. Okay, so maybe you came up with some of these. States, observes, discusses, points out, notes, found, concludes, describes. We could say these are rather neutral in the sense that they don't really seem to have any kind of, value judgment on them. We don't have any sense that this is, when someone says they state something, if it's positive or negative towards that point that they're stating. Same with observes, discusses, etc. So we've got here some examples. Jackson states that firemen drive too quickly. The researchers found that 2 out of 3 men do not brush their teeth enough. So you'll see here that these are, they're quite neutral with that information. And you will mostly use neutral reporting verbs in your writing. I think this is quite important. And there's often, with good reason, that you're using that. So I would recommend something that you do throughout, this kind of week as we go through as you go through these videos, but also as we go through the activities in class, is to make your own list of reporting verbs to use in your writing, and to build on that as you go through uni. Just because there'll also be some that you use more commonly in your own fields and disciplines, and those you feel more comfortable with. So just building that vocabulary. Okay, so here's some example. We're going to look at some examples now of expressing the author's positive attitude. So again, I'm going to ask you to jot down which reporting verbs indicate that an author has a positive attitude about what they are discussing. Okay, so you might have put asserts, supports, believes, urges, and argues. So for example, Copperfield supports the idea that pets should wear seatbelts, something suggesting a positive attitude towards this idea. Lee asserts that speed cameras are a waste of taxpayers' money. So a strong claim, an assertion, so this is, a sense, a kind of positive attitude towards this point. Okay, so with expressing the author's negative attitudes, which verbs do you think would indicate that an author has a negative opinion about what they are discussing? Hopefully you came up with some of the following: questions, doubts, disagrees, or dismisses. So we've got some examples here. Atkinson doubts that it is feasible to put seatbelts on pets. So you can see here the total difference if you were to put states. Atkinson states that it is feasible. That suggests in that sense agreement. But here doubts is, totally changing the meaning of that sentence. The New South Wales Ambulance Service dismisses the argument that speed cameras are a waste of taxpayer money. Again, if you were to change that to the New South Wales Ambulance Service argues that speed cameras are a waste of taxpayers' money, or to stick with the original structure of the sentence, maybe the opposite, the positive supports the argument, totally changes the meaning. So thinking about how the author, what their attitude is towards the point that they're making. Okay, but now turning away from the author to your own perspective as a student, including this in your essay, for example. How would you express your negative attitude towards that point that the author is making? So think about which verbs might indicate that you have a negative attitude about the information as a student writing an essay or report. You might have come up with words such as claims, assumes, asserts, or believes. So Jones claims that Coca-Cola has several health benefits. Here, the word claims does have this kind of, almost a hint that you're suggesting it's not based on evidence. And Harrison assumes that intake of caffeine will automatically result in addiction. You're suggesting that Harrison is making an assumption about this. So this is really even though it's in the same position, you can see in the sentence structure that you've got this reporting verb after the author's surname, it's actually more indicating your attitude towards their point rather than the author's. I'd recommend using negative reporting verbs with care, and being very careful as to not overusing them, but just making sure that that's really clear, that you want to make show your negative attitude toward that information, and not say a more neutral position, which is more common to use. Because it does give the reader the expectation that you will introduce discussion and information to refute those claims and assumptions. So if you, for example, say Jones claims that Coca-Cola has several health benefits, but then don't go on to actually explain why Coca-Cola doesn't have health benefits, or you don't go into more detail about that, why you've used that that negative reporting verb, that's not good. So you need to be able to also back that up if you're going to essentially critique in some way this author's claim. So an adverb can be quite useful as well for reporting verbs and for integrating others' ideas into our work. So what's an adverb? An adverb describes the verb. It can make your positive or negative opinion clear. And in academic writing, there are some that are useful. Some of these include strongly, mistakenly, erroneously, illogically, powerfully, convincingly. So as an example, Peterson convincingly or simplistically argues that violence on television impacts negatively on a child's development. That adverb there very, really clarifies what your position is in relation to this argument. And either way, they'll be very different, and you would have to then, of course, the expectation would be that you would elaborate on that and provide evidence as to why you have that view. Then there's Jones powerfully, mistakenly asserts that Coca-Cola has several health benefits. So you can see there, and again, we'll go into more detail on adverbs in our class, actually, when we're going to do some activities with both reporting verbs and adverbs, and we're going to kind of discuss some more examples about whether they're positive, negative, or neutral. And again, we'll talk more about adverbs, and they should, again, like the negative reporting verbs, be used sparingly, I think, because they can, it's easy to overuse them, and it does detract a little bit from the writing. But we'll talk more about that in class.